Welcome to our panel conversation on creating equitable learning in a virtual or Hyflex world with these four gracious contributors listed on the slide from different institutions sharing their experiences, working to create a more equitable teaching and learning environment for all. My name is Gyenis from Internet2. And we want to encourage audience participation throughout this session by utilizing the chat function to ask questions and share your own experiences using technology, processes, and people to address equity in an online environment. Although most institutions have returned to in-person course offerings, what are some of the benefits you realized from a virtual offering that help narrow that equity gap? Let's start the conversation with Kevin at Utah State University, where they had a lot of experience with remote learning prior to the pandemic. He can provide an overview of the teaching personas they've refined for teaching using technology in various virtual scenarios.
Thank you, Tara, and it's good to be here today. As Tara mentioned, Utah State University has had a lot of experience doing classroom-to-classroom high-end video broadcasting using a Cisco product before the pandemic hit. So going into the pandemic, we felt pretty good about our experience. But moving to Zoom, where the faculty was on Zoom and then students were on their own individual Zooms, and then last fall, when teachers were in the classroom, with some students, but many students were on Zoom, we started to notice some inequity in the teaching and learning. And one of the things that we decided to do was to take pause during the summer month and come up with some instructor personas using the various technologies and how things were arranged. And as we've come up with those, it's provided a great opportunity for conversation. That's what they were meant to do, whether it's a classroom to classroom teaching or with some students in the classroom with the instructor and other students joining remotely, or all students, whether they're in the classroom or remote, having the technology. It's helping us look at the challenges we face and also that equity for student learning. And one thing that we're realizing out of this, that training of the faculty plays a critical role.
Kevin, I'm really glad that you mentioned training. That's something that we at DePaul really realized early on, that we couldn't just say to faculty, just go teach the way you normally teach, right? Because that remote student experience was going to not be a great one. We had some limited experience. We built out classrooms 2 summers ago for fall of last year. We had mainly our law school faculty on campus last year. So they were our pioneers in this, and they had their own challenges since they teach primarily in Socratic method. And so that was particularly challenging. But one of the things that we realized early on was that we really needed to provide faculty with opportunities to get training, learn from each other, because there wasn't any expert on campus. And then we also realized that we needed to provide support. So one of the things we did early on was to hire students to be the assistants in the virtual space, because we realized that classroom management, trying to teach to face-to-face students and manage students that may be having technical issues or just had questions in the virtual space, was more than one person could certainly handle. So we hired 25 students to be our online learning assistants, and that we've carried that forward into this year as well. This past summer, we did a flex training, which was really a learn as you go. And we had demos from faculty, but we also spent a lot of time talking about the pedagogical challenges that you kind of brought up with regards to how do you engage and have active learning activities for both your in-person and your remote students. So, you know, we certainly are learning lessons. And now that we have 155 flex sections this fall, you know, now that's out in the wild, we're learning more, and we'll be revising those trainings as we move into training prior to our winter term.
Yeah, this is Jason with University of Washington. Glad you brought up training, just because it's a new challenge that we are looking as we look toward coming back to on campus. We had a challenge of, at the drop of a dime, everybody going online during the pandemic, and now that we're returning to campus, this is a new challenge for instructors in that how do I design my course or redesign my course to for a blended sort of learning environment. So not only do I have to teach the students that are in my classroom, but I may have students who may need to participate remotely. So how do I engage those students? And so what we did at the University of Washington was we collaborated with all of our different campuses, which we have 3, and we brought together all of our educational technologists and everyone who's an expert in education technology, along with some faculty members who were experienced in this, along with our Center for Teaching and Learning. And we kind of looked at this problem like, okay, coming in the fall is this new sort of blended approach to teaching and learning that is a new challenge. So what can we do to provide some considerations and some discussion, prime some discussions around this approach. We came up with a set of recommendations, and we also embedded that into our teaching with technology faculty institute that we teach every summer. We host this institute that provides a stipend to faculty participants. And basically the charge is to take your in-person class, make it online or blended, and then and include elements of inclusion and equity in that class, and then teach the class in the fall. So that's always a really great training, along with office hours that we offer for faculty to drop in and ask questions about any kind of technology that they're working with, and tool specific trainings. And all of our trainings are available remotely through Zoom. So it's been a really great program and opportunity for faculty to learn more.
Jason, those are really good points. And I just, we talk about support. So Tom from the University of Notre Dame here. And I look back on this, as I look at the last year or so, right, from last summer, and what we accomplished last year, we were very intentional, I guess, about how we designed, a whole host of new technologies, hardware, software, integrations in our classrooms. But we were very intentional about ensuring that we were providing as equitable as possible of an experience for teaching and learning for our students and faculty. And something that I kind of refer to as this infrastructure as equity, right? It's how do you leverage the infrastructure that you're putting in to provide as equitable an experience as you possibly can for teaching and learning. So, going back, last summer, we all did this, right? A lot of us installed, institutions, AV technology, cameras, microphones. We equipped a number of temporary classrooms with technology. We did things like an automated provisioner to provide Zoom links for all fall courses last year. We still do this through a automated process. And just some other integration work we did between Zoom and Panopto for recording and transcripts and things like that. But finally, it does come down to support, right? And those investments in technology would just completely fail if we didn't put those support scaffolding in place. So the infrastructure is not really just technical; it's human as well, right? So the training and support of these for this new environment, which was drastically different than how our faculty taught in the past, we had faculty workshops led by our partners in Notre Dame Learning. We worked very closely with, we augmented our help desk. We augmented our classroom AV support teams. We built a Zoom enterprise team that helps support Zoom on campus, as well as the hiring, much like DePaul has done, is with classroom assistants. So a number of students that were assigned to different types of classes where they could assist faculty in driving that, what we call dual mode. We didn't really go down this Hyflex road, but we called this, kind of termed this dual mode teaching for what we were doing here at Notre Dame. And that's kind of led to another concept we started kind of exploring earlier this year as a classroom as an ecosystem, right? That because it's more than just the hardware, the software, it's the training components, it's the integrations, it's the support, are all very integral to the delivery of teaching and learning here at Notre Dame. But as we fast forward to this fall, we decided to go back to face-to-face. So we are almost exclusively face-to-face, but that infrastructure remains in place. So in the event we have students that have need to quarantine, or they have an illness, or they might be traveling, that technology is still there to be able to either resume them into class or do the record the class and then provide that within our Panopto experience in the LMS afterwards. But again, we keep going back to this idea of like ensuring that we have the technology in place to try to get as an equitable experience as we possibly can.
I like what you mentioned about the recordings. One of the things that we were looking at, Tara, you had mentioned, like, what do we keep moving forward, right? And one of the things as we were thinking about this fall was that we've never been a lecture capture campus. We've been a face-to-face. And one of the things we realized was that students got used to lecture capture in the last 18 months because many of their courses were recorded via Zoom. And students use those for, review sessions. And if English isn't your first language, or if you have a learning disability, or just learn differently, there's all different reasons why that creates an equitable environment. And so, this idea now that people are more open to capturing their courses because they don't want to reteach when that student is out, it's also creating an environment that is more equitable for all learning styles. And then the other piece of that too is the ability of flex is allowing students who might otherwise have to drop out because something comes up in their life, the ability to be able to quickly pivot to a remote section of the course without having to, if they have to leave campus, they have to go take care of a family member, they're deployed, whatever, they still can, participate either via those recordings or via the ability to come in via the live link. So again, it's opening those pathways to education and success that may not have been there previously.
I think that one of the things that can help also beyond the technology is helping faculty to remember if they do have students in the classroom and some of them joining remote, to help them remember that there are remote students out there, to call on them. It's very difficult. It's very easy to teach to the audience in front of you, I should say, and a little more difficult. And it takes a conscious effort to remember there are students who are joining in with technology. And part of that goes back to both what Tom and Jason said about, making sure the technology that's in the classroom, like there's big monitors so that the teacher can see those students, maybe from the back of the room when they're talking to the students in the classroom, and other things that subtle things that you can do in your design, not only of the technology, but as a faculty member teaching, to make sure that those students who are joining remote feel part of the class.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Kevin, because that's been a big challenge for us is how do we, as we move forward, how do we encourage faculty to think about how they're going to teach remote students, but also students that are in the class at the same time. And one resource that I think has been really helpful in our exercise with this is, aside from the collaboration I just mentioned that we did, is the Hyflex learning community. And there's a really great article. It's a great resource. There's a great article on equivalent participation in a Hyflex course, and it really kind of looks at, well, what is participation? Is it your traditional, you're sitting in your physical classroom, or is it you're watching the videos online that the faculty has created? Are you participating in Canvas or in the LMS discussion boards? Are you attending, the Zoom class remotely? Or lots of different ways to participate in a class that are not in the traditional sense. So some really great ideas there that we'd be happy to share that resource out. But thinking about ways outside of the box we can engage that remote student to really get them involved and into the learning process is our next challenge.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Kevin said, right? It's those remote learners, engaging those students that aren't in the room. It's incredibly difficult. I teach a couple of classes, and I would notice as well, I'd have a couple students joining remotely, and you have to keep reminding yourself, well, we have a couple of learners coming in from outside. Let's make sure we pull them into this as much as possible, so they don't feel like they're left out of that learning experience. And Melissa, we were very much the same way. We had a very small lecture capture environment here at Notre Dame. Now we have the ability of doing this everywhere, and that I do think now the students, it's nice that they can go back and review those recordings. And we don't record everything, but it's the fact that if they didn't take good notes and maybe they were sick, they can go back and review that and follow up with their fellow classmates on the recording. So it's changed the game in a lot of ways for us, even though we're, this fall we're back face to face. That's part of our Notre Dame culture. And how do we, ensure that we still have some of those technologies and processes in place that can help us in the event we need to pivot again with, say, another variant.
And I think too, the ability to have those recordings where they can be captioned as well has been huge too. So for students that previously might have had to have, somebody in the classroom, transcribing or a transcriber, if the recordings are available and they're auto captioned, or even somebody who doesn't have an accommodation that would like to be able to read and follow along. I think those tools have been really invaluable and are things that we want to keep moving forward, and keep as a positive from the past 18 months.
I think you all have found some very significant silver linings in this experience, and the faculty and the students at your institutions are quite fortunate to have resources like you and the culture, the attitude perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think you've shown that peer-to-peer collaboration like this can really help optimize teaching and learning overall, across, many communities. And we really appreciate your time and sharing this. Thank you all and have a great day.